Now let's get to today's feature guest. We're happy to have Tom Donahoe with us here to discuss and take a look at some of his picks, particularly in pot and tobacco. It's great to see you.
Good to be here. Happy New Year.
How are you feeling about the new year?
I'm feeling fantastic from a wrap-up of the holiday season year over year. It's pretty killer, as I'm sure you know, and I think there's some pretty interesting action in 2020.
So what are you looking at in particular?
In terms of the pot stocks or in terms of just the recap from last year?
Well, let's start with the broad-based.
So again, you saw the about 3.5%, 3.4% year-over-year boost in holiday shopping. So from 2018 to 2019, e-commerce killed it again. It was up 18.8%. So a big win for obviously digital advertising, marketing, and platforms like that. But for the overall holiday shopping investor experience, it was pretty good.
So are you worried about some of the headlines that are coming out? Are you worried that we're going to have some sort of fear market where we're selling off? I mean, we're seeing gold jumping higher, but the truth is that we came up off the lows. Nobody's running for the hills. Do you expect some volatility? Do you expect a higher year in 2020 overall?
I think if you compare it to 2019, when I think about 90% of the stocks on the S&P 500, 90% had good years. So I don't think you're going to replicate that. I do think investors should be more careful and intentional with approaching what they buy and sell from a fundamental standpoint. And I think what we'll get to in a second, there are some good opportunities with new federal regulations that can provide some pretty good investment opportunities.
So let's talk about pot and tobacco.
Let's do it.
Yeah, tell me about what you're looking at in particular. I know you have some picks for us today too. Why this area and why now?
So I really want to encourage investors to not stop riding the bandwagon, but when you approach a hot market, so let's get into cannabis because you've got now the 11th state where it's fully legal, you've got 33 states where it's medical is legal. You've got that court of public opinion and the fact that it's almost a foregone conclusion that it will eventually become legal and decriminalized nationally. I would encourage investors to not just approach investing from I want to get in on the bandwagon, but try to see another opportunity where there's a few other hurdles that if companies can clear both things or take advantage of both things, that might mean a pretty special investment.
But your picks are not Kronos and Tilray and Aurora or Canopy, for example. I mean, you're picking some other things. What are you picking and why? So
let's start with the why first. There is, not thanks to, but because of the really appropriate negative reaction from the e-liquid marketplace, where you walk into a store, you'd be hard-pressed to find what is and is not regulated, what is not gray market stuff, which is really dangerous. So the federal government jumped in quickly, and they decisively rolling out, I think in early May, what's called the PMTA, the pre-market tobacco application. And really long story short, that is demanding that anyone in that e-liquid space in particular spend between $100,000 and $400,000 per product on going through a licensing process.
Right.
So that is not a small hurdle, especially if you think about a company that's got a half dozen or a dozen product lines. Those are millions of dollars that a lot of these new companies, their income statements and balance sheets can't handle, millions of dollars on these approval processes. So that is, again, from the e-liquid space. So if a company or companies can take advantage of both the cannabis court of public opinion groundswell, and they can take advantage of the tobacco e-liquid space, I think that provides a pretty good opportunity.
So what are some of these picks here that you have?
So I like three. We'll start with Pyxis, which is the first one, if that's okay. Again, this would be an example of a company that does participate in the non-THC but the cannabis space, so CBD oil. And they also are about a 145-year-old tobacco company. And
these are so popular. I mean, I don't see that this group is becoming less popular in the next decade, right?
People aren't going to stop.
And you also have a couple of others, but are these long-term holds too? I'll just throw that in there.
I think short-term and long, I think both, to be honest with you. I think they're going to have, it's going to be a win because they're going to be able to participate in getting approval, FDA approval, or going through the process, number one. And number two, the more states where the CBD and cannabis and that in the court of public opinion becomes more popular and used, I think, again, they can take advantage of both of those hurdles to clear.
Right. So tell us about the other two picks.
So we've got Greenlane Holdings, and you've got Turning Point. Greenlane is not an agricultural company, unlike the other two. They're in the device manufacturing space. They participate in the tools you use to appreciate both of those markets.
Right.
And then Turning Point, much like Pyxis, it's an ag company. They produce the actual products.
So you're talking about the high costs so that these companies can meet the new regulation. And these smaller type companies, where do they fit in?
So I think if you're
in the smaller?
Well, let's say Pixis is about just shy of $2 billion top line revenue.
Right.
Turning is about 1/5 their size.
But they can be competitive, is your point.
Correct. Well, they're going to be able to afford that e-liquid hurdle, that process, that federal process, and they are also have good exposure, and they can participate in as the country continues to adopt cannabis use, whether it's THC or CBD.
What do you say to the people that basically have been squashed in the group? I mean, there are people that have gotten into Canopy and Tilray and Aurora, and I haven't checked them lately or today, but I know throughout last year they were darlings. They were up 60, 70, 80%, and then next thing you knew, they were down 70%.
Here's the good news.
What do you say to those people?
I would say that the good news is you've got these three in particular that have good fundamentals, and they are all trading at near their low of their 52-week high. So I think Pixis is around $8, Green Lane's $3, around $28 for turning. So I think they're at their low point. What's the good news? The good news is I feel that the government should have stepped in, and they did. So it was something that should have happened, and you can't allow in a fairly fragile space from a consumer standpoint, you can't allow bad players to participate. So that's one of the reasons the government should be involved. So I would say in 2020, make good decisions with people that have a good future.
All right. Thomas Donahoe, thank you so much. CEO of Level Agency.